alarm, but we are live.
All right.
Yet, but
Yeah, just
Okay. So,
So when people, friends, uh, sisters, sewers, quilters get together and say, how about if we challenge ourselves to, and I know here at Confident Stitch, they do the tarts, the fiber art group from the Bitterroot, and they have shows all the time. Most of those shows are from a challenge that they've given to their group. So they've either done a color challenge or a fiber challenge or a shape challenge or something like that. And then everybody's left to their own devices to come up with what they would do with that challenge. In the Peace Quilters, of which I belong, um, to which I guess I belong. I am, we were interviewing a Peacemaker of the Year and learned more about Gustav Klimt. And then apparently the timing was right because the fabric world was learning a lot about Gustav Klimt too. And all of a sudden, there are these panels available of Gustav Klimt's artwork. And it kind of came out of the movement in fabric art where they were doing Van Gogh and Monet stuff and some other um, famous artists. And because we were learning a little bit about Gustav Klimt through this Peacemaker of the Year, it was just a serendipitous thing. But we thought, well, let's do something fun with this fabric. So we challenged ourselves to take a panel of Gustav Klimt and to make a quilt. Everything under the sun came out. Mine was pretty traditional. I put the panel in the middle and did pinwheels around the outside. They took on, because of the fabrics, there was a blackish background and some deep colors that were in his work. And so it had it wasn't quaint pinwheely, but I liked how it turned out. And then other people did other kinds of borders. Some did big, small, and one woman actually even cut her panel up and sewed it into the design of the quilt. And so that was fun. So there are so many things that motivate us to go, I'm going to make this quilt. And there's a challenge for us in that. I'm going to guess that those watching on video and then for those of you here, that it can bog us down too, because I don't know about you, but Pinterest is like an hour every morning, and especially since retirement, and so there's a lot of black hole abyss to distance ourselves with the actual doing of making a quilt. That's okay. It fills our hearts and minds with ideas, and who knows how it'll translate into our work. But there is a point too where seeing so many things can really bog us down and go, I don't even know what I want to start with. And I just have to say, start. Just start. Pick a person, pick a function, pick a fabric, pick something, go to your studio and just look and grab and pull one out and say, this is where I'm starting. It may be that as you lay stuff out, it doesn't even get used, but it starts you in the action process. And I've only made these copies. I didn't give one ahead of time for those of you watching online. So if you don't have one of these in your hands, just go to Pinterest and start looking at quilts. That's all this is just, okay, I'll take that one and that one and that one and print them off. Because what I want you to think about is sometimes the quilt design pulls us in. And so this one here is basically a variation of rail fence. It's a fun variation, and I'm going to draw it out. In fact, I have this quilt finished and ready to show you. This one is a variation on a carpenter star. And carpenter star is one of my favorites. I love it. And you can do it with half square triangles completely. You can do it with, the background is sometimes squares. You can do it with a mix of squares and half square triangles. You can do it with diamonds. And so there's a variety of ways to create that. And this one is yet another, and it's half square triangles with the half square triangle of it being strip pieced. So the bright color section, and I don't think the white is any strip piece, but I've seen them where the light side is also strip pieced. And so it's just very subtle, so you don't notice it at a glance. So again, there's just so many things you can do when you just start with, I love this block. Now, I have a couple favorites. I absolutely love a 9 patch. Absolutely love a 9 patch. And a 9 patch is so much fun to play with. One of the first frequently made quilts that I did was 4 quilts for kids. And I just would go to my stash of fabric and I'd pull at least a dozen fabrics that kind of went together. It didn't have to be a perfect thing, but they kind of pulled in the same direction of colors. I won't say color family necessarily. It wasn't homogeneous, but it might have been a print like, oh, here, like this. And then pulling from that, I'd also grab some pinks and some greens. Now the greens then might have some purples in it. The pinks might have some reds even in it. And so, you know, I'd have to make some decisions about, did that go too far or not? And is it still going together? I'd cut 3-inch squares and I'd throw them all in a bag. And I went to my kids' homerooms and school groups and had each kid just lay out a 9 patch with 2 colors. And so it was the 5 or the 4, a different color arrangement. And then and I had a piece of paper that they did their square on, and we stacked them. I took them home and sewed them and quilted it, and then we gave the quilt to Quilts for Kids. And one project I did at Washington Middle School was to have every homeroom do it, and I brought sewing machines so that if kids wanted to sew, they could learn to do that. But at the very least, they just designed their 2-color 9 patch, and that's it. We had, gosh, I think over 50 quilts that the kids designed or made or whatever. And it was so much fun. It was just wonderful. So they go together lickety split. They are, and every one of them was beautiful. I mean, it wouldn't have been the one I'd have planned. And when I saw some of the 2-color combinations, that made me realize, okay, those 2 fabrics may not have been the best choice in this group, but okay. And, you know, there's a theory that you have to have ugly fabric. Well, one person's ugly fabric is another person's beauty. So it's not necessarily a sure thing. So, so the 9 patch is fabulous. If you simply cut, you have a scrap of fabric and you have to have at least 4 to make your 9 patch because you have 4 and 9. And that's not really, you can have all 9 different if you want, but to do this. And then what happens is those 2 colors work, and then the one next to it kind of works, and the next to it kind of works, or definitely works. And so it starts to flow and it starts to bring on this really dynamic attraction, I think. So it was a lot of fun to do with them. Then when you go out of a 9 patch, the other thing I really love to do is half square triangles. And then you have what's called geese in the pond. This is my absolute favorite baby quilt to me. And so that's another thing to think about in, well, what should I do? What should I do? Take a block that you're fond of, shoe fly, monkey wrench, snail's trail, whatever it is, and maybe it's a Ohio Star or something, whatever block you like, and enlarge it to a 1-block quilt. and then use fabrics that you just adore and don't want to cut up too much because you're going to have some nice big pieces. So this geese in the pond block makes the best baby quilt. It's if you count across, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares across. And so if you think a baby quilt is maybe 40 inches, that means those are 8-inch squares. So cut 8.5 because you add the seam allowance. So everything then gets figured on that. It happens to work really well with 7.5 because you have a 9 patch and you're dividing in threes. 8 doesn't divide into 3 very easily. So 7.5 finished square is really perfect. And then if you want to put a border on it, yeah, fine. If you don't. This one has no border on the block, but I think it's really just a block. It's not intended to be a quilt, but I've done them full quilt. This one is a variation on that carpenter square, and yet the way the color is arranged is it doesn't look like that circular ring around it as much. So a lot of possibilities. So when you find a block, flying geese, and then if you do Dutchman's puzzle, you're mixing the flying geese in different directions. That alone can start you out. So if you like a block, then you just have to figure out, well, am I picking fabrics to do a 2-color quilt? In which case, this one is waiting for a flying geese baby quilt. And I just love both of them. They're so fun and different. And then this one, I'll pass these around, but I don't know if on the camera they can be detected. This has this like an olive. It's got an olive green and a yellowish center. I guess olives have red centers, but at any rate, so then I thought, oh, I could even play around, and in the 9 patch, I could put a different color. So stick with the 2-color, but then add. And if you look up geese in the pond, you'll find different arrangements of color. But a 2-color quilt, a friend of mine once said, you can't go wrong with a 2-color quilt. My problem is I can't stick to 2. So the other thing is to think 2 family quilt. So you have lights and you have darks, and you just kind of pull from there. So so this is fun. And when you look at this, then when you put that with it, I'm telling you, I think that's really fun. But it wouldn't be something I'd want like in every block of a quilt, I don't think. Maybe not. This one is kind of wild and fun. It might be fun in that center of the 9 patch. This one has a nice dark feel to it. And in the geese in the pond, and again, that's this one, sometimes the rails that connect the 9 patches, sometimes those are different color arranged, blending color. And as in this block, it's all scrappy. But, and then I have to say this became my fave. Well, I like that one best actually, but it's kind of weird. And then what I'm doing here on the table is what we call auditioning. So just like a play, you audition. Now I've talked about doing this in this group a lot, but I finally made my portable design wall. And what I used was the foam core poster board. So it's very thin. It's only like a 1/4 inch thick, maybe more than that. And then I used duct tape for the hinges, making sure that they weren't super tight, and so that when they folded, there was a little slack room for them to fold flat. And I did use 3. 3 came in a package, and as you can see, it will give me enough height if I made 2 of these to go into a queen size quilt. But it also, I have found accidentally that it does this fun propping. So sometimes it props on the bottom and leans back against something, and sometimes it does that. So when you're auditioning, the very best way to look at fabric is out in front of you. It's the way our human eye is accustomed to processing in the brain. It's our best way to do that. Weird as that is, we often look like this at an angle and put things on a table. So if you can, hold it up, or when you take a picture of it, hold your camera over so that you're getting straight on, and then look at your photo. Some other things you can try to do with auditioning is you can take your picture. Good old cameras. I never thought I'd love my smartphone, but boy, do I. So I'm going to hold it up here, take my picture. Sometimes I can't even tell if I'm trying to get a big one. I just lift it straight up and click and cross my fingers, and then try to go back and see if I need to adjust anything. Then when you turn the one on, then you have the options on the bottom for editing. You can change the black and white, and right off the top of my head again, excuse me, I can't remember how we did that, but somewhere in there. Anyway, you guys probably know better than I do. But when you change the black and white, you can look at it and see if the contrast gives you what you want. So that's a nice way to play with that auditioning piece. But again, Geese in the Pond and a lot of blocks are just fine with 2 colors if you have enough fabric. And then that's the problem. If you're at a fabric store, great, get plenty. I I don't think I have ever made a quilt from the pattern, gone and gotten the fabric to make that quilt exactly the amounts that are in the pattern. I don't think I've ever done that. I do buy fabric and have my stash. I usually get, if I really love something and think I'm going to use it a lot, I'll get even 3 or 4 yards. But most of the time I get a yard, yard and a half, 2 yards. Unless it's specifically for a scrap quilt, in which case I probably will just get half yards, which ends up being like 2 fat quarters, or I might buy fat quarters. So right there, I gave you unless. There are no rules here. Throw those rules right out. If you're going to do a quilt like this, also one of my favorites, because then the next thing I really love, 9-patch, half square triangles, Geese in the Pond. The next quilt I really love is strips, any kind of strip piecing. This quilt I brought in, I think, in 3 or 4 variations somewhere through the videos that we've done here. And I have it with me, and it's a fail. Well, it's not a fail. I like it, but it didn't work, and so I had to put sashing. And what I didn't do is I didn't audition the fabrics with my camera and do the black and white. And as you can see in this black and white photo, you can distinctly see the dark knot that gets formed. And I don't know if you can see it as well with the light knot, but one of them definitely stands out. Sometimes both of them do, depending on the fabrics you choose. And what happened is this was the only one. And as the light comes out at you, and then that made the whole other part of the quilt recede and kind of disappear. And the light isn't as interesting, and so it just was not successful in my opinion. So after I did it and just had the blocks together, and I must, oh yeah, here they are. These bags, by the way, are really cool. It's a little zipper pouch on top, and it's where the pillowcases for sheets go. So you have these two blocks. So you can keep your separate little pieces up there and then put your bigger project there. So these are the actual blocks. And I'm just going to lay this out. I hope that works for folks. Okay, so the arrangement of this, and I'll show you the trick of making it. It's so easy. Gosh, it's easy. And is this. And it works. It's okay, but it's just really busy. And I should have taken some photos and done the black and white. I think what I could have done is I could have just used these two as the strong prints and maybe done something more all green or orange or something in there. So not truly solid, but something solid-ish. And so that like that, I wasn't happy with it. So then I played with sashing. So that's what I ended up doing. This quilt goes together so fast because it doesn't need sashing. When you do sashing, let me tell you, it was a nightmare of confusion because I was thinking, okay, this cornerstone needs to be the same as that dark, but then this cornerstone needs to be the same as this light. Maybe no cornerstones, they got lost. That didn't work. It was much more work than I wanted it to be, but it's okay. It's all right. I'm good with it, and I think it'll be, it'll be some person's fun whatever quilt. And the fabrics are super fun when you start to look at them closely. This is I think it's a cave feather, and this is just a little feather print. And then this gray one, I got at the Stevensville Pharmacy Fabric Corner, that they have in their store. And I love it. It's got every little critter in it you could imagine. So the ease of this block is so simple that what happens is, I'm going to look at the wrong sides, but you have four strips of fabric. So it's the four fabrics that are in the block. Sewing those together in sets of four, always the same order. You then put them on top of another strip set, the very same, so they're put together, but one is pressed up, one is pressed down. So then those seams kind of nest. Then as you're laying out your width of fabric sets, you cut them in squares. Whatever your width is, that's the square size. So you don't have to have it fit anything. It's whatever that is. They don't have to all be the same width strip either. So you can do quite a bit with it in creativity, but I almost always do. And it's just easier to keep track of things. But you do have to have them in the same order. And then if all this feather one is, say, 3 inches wide and all this yellowish one is 2 inches wide, that's okay, but they all have to be the same. So when you've got them stacked in the strip sets, whatever that width is, that's the square you cut. You're going to have some left over. And then you draw a diagonal line and sew a half square triangle, and you get one with the length of the light, and you get one with the length, the long one of the gray. So it's the easiest. I love this quilt. It looks so pretty in it. And then it is set on point on this, but as you can see, it could be just a square pattern too. And if it's on point, then you have to do these setting triangles, which will be the topic of something else and down the road. So having blocks that you've practiced, that you're familiar with, and that now your curiosity is piqued on, I wonder what it would look like if. So, so having strips, half square triangles, 9 patches in my wheelhouse, that really opens up a whole bunch of possibilities. And one of them is this one that on my weird coloring came out yellowish. It looks like a rail fence, and it kinda is, but the block, and then this is something I do a lot with Pinterest, is I'll make a print of a block. No, I know I started talking about that other one, but say this one or this one. We can stick with this actually. I just have those already done. So let's say we're going to do this. And then if you go up into a corner, that's usually where you'll find the unit that is multiplied. So if I go into this corner and I come here and got to think here. Okay, here, here, and here. I think I did that. Okay. So I'm doing it upside down, sorry. So when you look at it, what you'll find is that there is a long bar that's dark. There's a square, and there's a short bar that's 2. Okay? And that's all this quilt is. That's it. And then you turn it. So then this over here has long bar. Yes, long bar. I didn't get the right proportion, sorry. It's dark, square, and here. So that's actually a square. Okay. So then, and then you go, well, I'm going to come up here because then you'll get that plus. So you come up here and, oops, I did that wrong. I'm sorry. Trying to do it here and then getting it off. So you have to have this cross seam here. So here's that one. Then this one moves over to that side of the line, and this one moves over to that side of the line. So it ends up like that. So these two are completely reversed. These two are completely reversed. And you have the spinning pinwheel that goes around. So if you play around and you have on your computer and you have the option to print it on a piece of paper, copy the image and print it on a piece of paper, then you can draw and play around with it. Sometimes when you're getting a photo on Pinterest, it won't be square. It'll be at an angle. And so the picture will have been taken this way on something laying down. And so you can't quite, it's a lot harder to do it when it's like that. But if you find a picture like this and you come up with your square, what you're going to find is, I think I did that. Yes, I did. Okay. Is that you're going to have 4 strips of prints in a white, and then you're going to do a stitch and a flip white and a color, and then that gets turned. So you're going to play around with, so by looking at it and analyzing where's the block. And one thing you can do on your phone or computer is when you get the photo up, you can enlarge it. So you can try and get that intersection of the 2 seams so that you can see where those seams intersect, and then you can kind of analyze it. So, so playing with your photos and drawing them out, this is what I discovered here. So I love this pattern. And then I found it in a book, but the centers of the stars were a 4-patch of darker fabric. And it really changed the look of it because each thing has like a wreath around it of white. So I started playing with this, went up to the corner, looked for a repeat. So here's that dark triangle row. Find that same one here. Go in the same amount. So you've got a square. That's probably going to be your block. Now, sometimes you have 2 blocks that get combined. And so sometimes it's a little trickier. But go to a corner, start drawing out an amount and see what you can come up with. And that'll give you what you're making, what you're actually constructing. And it'll tell you if, oh no, I'm not making that one. That looks a little too kooky. Sorry, not today. Or if you're gonna go to something that like this. This one here that's called hopscotch, no cutting kit. You can buy the kit and it's all cut out for you and everything. But this hopscotch quilt, it's if you look it up online, you'll find the picture of it. It is so easy. It's actually, it looks like a diamond shape and then a star shape. It looks like 2 separate blocks. It kind of is, but it's basically the same thing. You have a square in the center that's large. So you have a square in the center that's large, and you either have a flying geese that points go out, and that gives you your star. Whoops. Right. I forget what's in the corners on that. Just squares, right? Yeah. So just squares. Okay. Or you have a flying geese where the points go out. That's all the difference. And then they're alternated. So the center of the diamond is, and I think, I can't tell so much. Yeah, I think on the diamond, this is also a half square triangle in the corners. So it's that slight addition. But it wouldn't have to be. Could be. So then, and again, that's your prerogative. You're making the quilt. You don't have to do it the way somebody else did. So when you have fabrics that just excite you, then that's wonderful. I was asked by a friend to make a quilt for the recovery with casting, or for casting for recovery. And it's women with breast cancer who fly fish for their recovery, as part of their recovery. And so a while back, I had been entranced by 3 fabrics in a line that were trout and fishing rods that ended up having kind of a stripy effect, and some fly tied thing. Anyway, fishing lures. and so those 3 fabrics, and they were in a rust, olive green, and a brown gold. And oh my gosh, I just loved them. I just went, oh, I got to have these. So I got them, but then nothing grabbed me. I mean, I don't fish. It didn't hit me. My son's a big fly fisherman, but he doesn't need any more quilts. And so I was kind of at a loss. Well, then this friend called me and asked if I'd make a quilt for this group of women for their auction. And I thought, oh, I don't know, those 3 fabrics, just to use those, I don't know. So I started pulling from my stash, and I have like 30 fabrics that all go with it, and this is the quilt they're going to get. So this will be it. And I have a dark green that's going to make these points, and a variety of dark greens actually. So I love scrap quilts, because then you can just go pile of greens, pile of rust, pile of tans, pile of, whatever. And so so that's something fun. I think sometimes somebody puts you in a position to say, hey, would you make me a quilt? And honestly, for me, I know not everybody feels this way, but it's very, very selfish. I love handling fabric. I love cutting it. I love sewing it. I have this real strong sense of belonging to the women of my past. And while I'm sewing, I just like channel them, I swear. And the women I know around the country who sew, I feel connected to them when I maybe don't see them so much. And it just is a real comforting thing to do. Once I've made that quilt, I've had my share of joy and then some. So it's not for me to judge it. It's not for me to love it or take precious care of it. However, somebody who receives it, they're now in charge of loving it and loving the experience. If it goes to their dogs, it goes to their dogs. If it goes in the back of their pickup, it goes in the back of their pickup. If it gets framed on the wall and hangs in posterity, that's lovely too. But I hope that this set of talks shares that sense with you, that if we're not doing things that make us feel more whole, more special, more rewarded in life, and also give us an opportunity to give back to someone else, then don't do quilting. Find something else. There's plenty of good things out there. Yeah.
What would a quilt rather do? Hang on the wall looking beautiful, or get all raggy and everything?
Exactly. Exactly. Someone's, yeah. Or it saved someone's life in the back of a police car, I mean, that's like, oh, kept them warm after an accident or a meth raid or something. Yeah, there's just a whole lot of stuff. So this is another option with 9 patches. Oh my gosh. So this one is a solid square of the light color. And then when you piece a 9 patch, you make rails. So rail fences in the flying geese, or the geese in the pond. And so when you do that, if you're making them in speed method, you're sewing strips of light, dark, light, and then cutting them across, and you're sewing strips of dark, light, dark, and cutting those up, and then mix and matching. In a scrappy quilt, the more fabrics, the more fabrics you have, the less you have to plan. Honestly, you can throw them all in a bag and sew them together without any plan at all. Because if sometimes these fabrics are close to each other, oh well, they, they kind of take on a glow, and then that's all right. The color moves, it's dynamic. You don't have to worry about it. So this is just a fun, this was easy peasy. Um, and a bunch of brown fabrics I had, browns and blacks and golds, that I just pulled together. But you can see some of them have a lot more rust in them, and then some of them have no rust at all. Some of them have, more of the black and brown, and some of them have hardly any of that. So it's that mixing together. And then this one came in. I thought in my studio it looked brown, and boy, it's gray. And um, and so it kind of, I look at it and go, well, that doesn't go. I wouldn't have put that in there if I'd have noticed, but it's okay. It's okay. Exactly. Yeah, because there is a gray in here. Absolutely. There's a. It does. It does. So yeah. So I mean, there might be moments when you look at your work and go, "Oh, I shoulda, coulda, woulda," and yeah. So you also did this, and how wonderful. And do you know that after completing something like this and passing it on to someone, you are in a pretty small group of people who are able to do that. And that's, I mean, I'm really proud of what I know how to do. And I'm also really fortunate to have the resources I do. And on that note of expense, I do love fabric, and I do love buying fabric. There are ways to get fabric. Join a guild, ask people to share with you. Make it known in the guild that you like scraps, and have people bring you their scraps. Let me tell you, there's no end. Yes. Um, and So you can go to the Senior Citizen Center. Sometimes the Goodwill will have fabric. Sometimes other secondhand stores. Garage sales are great. And then oftentimes the quilting world is growing older, and so many of us are getting to that point where we're thinning down our possessions. And so yard sales you'll see all the time that are specifically fabric or craft. And if you go to those, you can get tremendous bargains. So the 9-patch concept also expands to implementing rectangles as opposed to squares, and putting them in rows of 4 to get 8. And I found this pattern in a wonderful book, 75 Fun Fat Quarter Quilts. And it's great. It tells you exactly how many fat quarters you need to make the quilts that are in here. And I love a random look. And I mean, that is an appealing thing to me. So I saw this and went, oh, I know what I'm going to do. This is the same block though, only it's ordered. This is the same block, and this is the same block, but the order and the contrast and the dark light combination just simply sets it up differently. So taking time to look at books, but again, just pick one. Just jump in and go, the water is fine. I'm going swimming. So at Quilts for Kids, I was asked, I don't have any more of the fabric in its entirety, but you will get the gist. Okay. I was asked to use this. Now, another woman in Quilts for Kids used it already, and she did an absolutely amazing job. She used like 3-inch half square triangles where one half was black, I think, and one half was strips, so tiny little buggers. And she put it together absolutely fabulously. Well, I said, okay, let me give this a try. There was more of it, and she wasn't interested in doing anything more. So, so I took it. So it's kind of panel-ish, but it is by the yard, and it's our major cities. Some of our major cities: Washington, Seattle, New York. I don't know all the others. Anyway, so here they are. I think there was one more because there were six. Oh, there's six. So it was all put together this way. Well, it was really evident right away that they weren't all the same height. So, modify, coping strips. Um, so those of you who haven't used coping strips, what it means is to make this be this big, you add strips and you just cope. And so I cut the strips to see which is largest and smallest and what I'd have to work with. I found the pattern in that book, and I pulled from my fabrics this selection. Now remember too that sometimes on your fabric the selvage will have those paint spots, or the not paint, but printing ink spots, and it will actually lay out the colors, so you can kind of even go from that if you want. I don't usually bother, but you can. So I'm going blue, black, gray, definitely. We've got this in Seattle. We have Mount Hood, I guess. That's swirly blue white. We have the light beams that give a blue white. And we have this fun little red that's in here. And I think every panel has it. So there's this little bit of red. And I thought, okay, go to the fabric stash and let's see what we got. And I had these in stacked yardage, so I was able to cut strips. And if you need to use the pattern to figure out what your sizes are, do that, of course. But really, you can do it any size you want. It doesn't matter. It's that when you start assembling blocks, you start realizing that you have to have a way to get them to connect, so they have to be equal squares somehow. So these, what they ended up being in that random layout, started to show you, is this. Lovely pink background here. No. So there it is. And so by taking this, I think I had probably 12 fabrics maybe in the lights and dark contrast to do the squares. And the trick is that you cut them in half for width of fabric. You sew a dark and a light together, boom, and then open it up and cut it your short, which is 3.5 in this case. These are cut 4.5. And then every block, while it looks like there's a U, it's not. It's these two sides get created. Whoops, I'm losing my third wheel there. So this is the block. So these two strips get added to make it square. And the instructions in the pattern have you cut these 2.5. So you have 4, 4, 8. You add 2, 2, and you have 12. This way you have 3, 3, 3, 3, 12. So either way, then what I did is I took the panel, I had a dark blue grunge, and then I found this black starry fireworky looking thing. And the widest one I started with, and so I just did the two blues. Then all of the others needed more than that, and so I found this and thought, oh, I should have, oh well. But so they have some combination. They're not uniform in the width of the strips. They just have coping strips, and I coped too. Yeah. So I was really happy with how it turned out.
And you wonder what that red really said
Isn't it fun?
Totally different if you chose a different color.
Gray. Yeah,
Right.
if you put gray, which I actually had considered.
Yeah, gray would have been.
It would have been fun too, but yeah, but it was a kid. It's for quilts for kids, so some teenage somebody who knows a little bit about cities is gonna have fun with that, I hope. And then because this is also the way I make quilts, I don't do very well with reading a pattern and sticking to the amounts and so this many. And I do pull from my stash, and some of this was just, that's all I had. It was one strip of 4.5. And so then I had to find another one, and so it was a little bit of oh, how about this one? It was very fun. It's Christmas morning for sure. And so when I did these, I have this stack plus those strips. So who knows where this is going to go? But another thing that can happen with rectangles, because again, you have to have a way to get them into a square in order to connect to others. I'll be right now. So I'm going to put these two together and imagine it being just one. So let's say this square should be right, I think, almost, kind of. So if you have that square in the middle and you go around like that rail fence was, it pinwheels around, then this one goes here and this one goes here. And now I have a square that can be added to another square. So that's another way. And so when you have leftovers, you get to be creative again and play with however that's going to go together. I really love this. I think I got it here. And the Japanese piece. And so I'll hold it over here. So I'm thinking that I might do a little strip of this around the two sides anyway. It's plenty long. But it's also big enough just like it is. So don't know. But this fabric has such a bold design. If it were used within the quilt, you wouldn't have to worry at all about how much and what size of piece you're cutting. But if you are doing a border, you might need to think about, okay, opening it up so that the weave and the stretch while it was on the bolt is straight. And you might have to cut to get the same just like 2 star centers or something so that it lines up when you piece the borders together.
It looks like that. What is that, Japanese embroidery? What is that called?
Sashiko?
Yeah.
Or sashiko. I'm not sure which way is it. But yeah, it does. There certainly is a design like this. Okay. So starting your quilt, gosh, learn about quilts, learn about blocks, get your favorite blocks together, take a look at fabrics. Buying fat quarters is a great way to expand your horizon of what you have at home. It is little more expensive because you're paying the staff here to cut the pieces for you. And a fat quarter, for those of you on watching who don't know, when you take a quarter yard, you only get what, 8 inches? And when you take a fat quarter, you take a half a yard and cut it in half here. So you get a better sized piece to play with. Unless, of course, you need borders, in which case a regular quarter yard is probably going to do you better. Another thing to think about for starting something is smaller. So baby quilts, wall hangings, table runners. If you haven't ever made a star design, you might want to make something like a table runner for practicing. And you might only do 3 of these if you're just looking for something to go on a countertop or a table center. But this gives you that opportunity to try it. It also gives you an opportunity to try fabrics with each other and see if you really do like them together. If you have plenty, you know.
And it's also small enough you can practice your quilting.
Yes, absolutely. Table runners are a favorite of mine. I make them all the time. And it's also a great gift, you know, and go to somebody's house for dinner and you just do a hostess gift.
You must do that alone.
Yeah. Oh, let's see. Or, you know, and pot holders. Pot holders are even smaller, and even, you know, everybody needs pot holders. So, so there's that. And then this table runner, this is putting it on point. It's just a rail fence. And it's scrappy. So it's truly just using your scraps. You use some light in the middle. This one actually is maybe a consistent fabric, I think. But the strips on the outside are just from the scrap box. And so, you end up with a square and they're all the same size. And then you have these triangle that fit into the sides. And it automatically creates this diamond. Yeah, or not diamond, but points on the end, which is kind of nice. If you need it longer, then of course you just, instead of 3 in this row, you'd have 4. And you'd be adding this way and moving it on out that way. So, and okay. And then say you find some patterns that you like. Again, this idea of doing a table runner. There's this pattern that's online, and honestly, I cannot say the name without laughing because it just is so syrupy. It's the name of this quilt, because you can get it online by May Lily. Eternal Mother's Embrace. I'm sorry. It's like, what? Why did they name it that? And I hope that's not like a really mean thing to say to the person who did this, like it was some very special moment in life. But this is the quilt, all right? And I love it. I just love how it wiggles and moves.
It really does.
Yeah, I just love it. And in the actual photo that was online, the fabrics that were used, it has a lot more kind of active feel in the black and white version. And I've made this in Table Runner. And what I did was I did buy this pattern and online, and it was sent to me electronically, and so I could make copies of it. And yeah, this, if you look at the photo, it still doesn't show off the colors that they chose, but So they have all the different sizes. Oh man, I copied both sides. Let me see. So what I did, because it's a little tricky, so sometimes when you're taking on something a little more complex, if you take your fabric swatches and tape them by the numbers that are assigned or letters that are assigned to your fabrics, you can uh, keep it together better. Maybe, maybe not. I had a little. And then what I did, because I'm a very visual person, is I blew this up and then I just, with darker tape, blocked off so that I could see the table runner. I made a mistake once of looking at a quilt in a magazine and thinking table runner, and just kind of looked at it and figured it out. Good thing. And so I try to give myself more clear parameters on what size and how many. And this, if you tend to look at it as this center with the curves around it, the embrace, I guess, around it, and as the block. But see up above, there's a half a block. So I defined it as the block was this. And then after I figured out that was the block, I could have followed the instructions, but I don't do that very well. So and also there wasn't a list of what was needed for table runner. So I had to figure that out. But I went back to it and thought, okay, I'm going to think about this differently. And it's all half square triangles and squares. And that's all this is. And then it's about putting a half square triangle of those two fabrics, of these two fabrics, of those two fabrics, and so you just have to kind of figure that out. And I started out with fabric from here that I love. I don't think you have any more of this. These little foxies, they're so cute. I just love it. And I've made about 4 of these now, and I've put the fox in different sections of the quilt, so I've changed the light dark arrangement. But I just go to my fabric stash and find things that go. And so I've got, and these are the half square triangles that you need. You're going to have some of those, some of these. And so you're going to have a combination of half square triangles and then of squares. And then it's just making the block. Sometimes what I do is I use my giant, oh, I managed to drop a few here. Sorry. I use my big square. So I know you guys have one here, but I don't see it readily. So I have my big square that I use for squaring up a quilt, and it's 16 and a half inches, I think. And so it's plenty big, mostly, to lay out the triangles and then repeat the block and stack on top of each other, and then go to my sewing machine and chain sew. And so you're just doing one whole column all the way down and then move on to the next whole column all the way down and so on. So, and that's a good way to get those done. Then, saving my happy place for the last here. This I am really, really happy with. Really proud of it. Oh, building attention. No, I really love Claire Emery, but there's a number of artists who have work that you're going to be fond of, and calendars, old calendars can be a great source of inspiration for color. They can be an inspiration for design if you're going to do an applique, or even to think rails, a rail fence, that combination of those colors would be really pretty in a quilt. And so what appeals to you in a photo or a drawing or a painting or a print is likely to appeal to you in fabric too. So you can get inspiration from that. From greeting cards, I have a box of greeting cards that I love dearly. And then sometimes my quilt studio is full of piles of these go together, and they're tipping over and stacked on top of each other. And then sometimes I go to them and I just go, okay, I'm sick of looking at these in a pile. I'm going to do something. And so I cut strips of all of them. And so these are some fun. So the quilt show's theme is Spread Your Wings next April, not this coming April, but the 2026. And so, and the butterfly house is somehow going to be incorporated into our show. So I have bugs and I have butterflies and I have flowers and more butterflies, rainbows, all kinds of fun things. So anyway, I just cut a bunch of strips and put them together in a box so that I can find them when I want them. And I love these leftover boxes for projects. It keeps they're this is a great size. I also use the spinach ones. Those are good. And for something smaller like a table runner, we have something like this. Okay, so this, because of the quilt show, and I'm the chair of the quilt show, I found some patterns on Pinterest, and I just said, I'm not really content with quite how those work. So, whoa, we're dropping again. Sorry. Got too much weight on it, I suppose. So I made this. And
So was that a pattern you found?
I made it completely. Yeah, and so what happened was I saw one, I drew it out on graph paper, and I thought, oh, that's just kind of, it didn't have enough detail to it for my liking, and so I played with making some other squares, half square triangles, and connecting lines, and like this one that goes down, and how to make the tail flare out instead of just come straight and done. And the other fun thing I did is I added this. It's piping, and so I did a stitch and flip. So I had a square of this same fabric, a square here, and then I folded a piece of this blue just so it came ever so slightly beyond the line, sewed on top, trimmed it off, and opened it up. And so then I had this, and then did the same, basically the same thing there with just half a square. We have to cut a little bigger in half because you have two seam allowances that get eaten up there. But so I played with that too. And were I to do it again, I would do that here. I wouldn't want to add too big of a line, but I think just adding that dark right here would define that better. And then also like here where color joins the background. So I didn't do that. Next time. So I don't know, how are we on time? Oh, good. Okay. 15 minutes is good. This is the one that I showed you the picture of. And on, whoops. Well, hi. Like when your cat jumps up in your, on your sewing machine. So this is the one. It's queen size now. And that's the one that's on the picture, yeah. And one of the things too to mention here is much of this is batik, but not all of it. It's a mix of batik and woven regular quilter cotton fabric. And so it's quite a mix. But sometimes what you have to think about is the style of the print. So, for instance, this batik here, right here, if that flower design was a stronger color, I don't think it would have worked. But it's soft enough that it's just kind of blendy. These stars, I love the color and I could not make myself give it up. But they do add a little different energy because they're stars. Stars, I don't know. This one here is a little bit of a print, but it's kind of, I don't know if modern is the right word, but it has these spirally curly cues. I don't think it's obscure enough. It's not a calico. So sometimes something doesn't work because not the colors are just perfect, but because, I don't know, the print just is the wrong thing. I'm putting Japanese with calicos or something. Yeah, and so kind of a modern print with something more Victorian looking or something like that. So sometimes you have to think that way. This print here, I really didn't use much of it. In fact, I had to use it because I ran out of some other stuff. Oh, this one I love. And so I really was impatient and just grabbed it and went, oh, we're going with that. It's a little iffy maybe in whether it goes, but I like it. I like it a lot. So there's that. And you can see here the block, or the unit, I should say, is this. So it's this rail, the dark, a square of the color, and two small squares of the color. And then they combine in pairs and in, let me see. Yes, they combine in pairs, and then and each pair then changes the direction. And so you end up with this really big square. Let's get it to square off for you. So that is the large block. So it's this unit flipped this unit, and then this combination turned quarter turn, turned a quarter turn, turned a quarter turn. That's it. So lots of fun. And this went together so fast. Oh my gosh. It was really fast. So let's look at what happens for me. That could be dangerous. But so these two dragonfly, this dragonfly print is one I got. Love it. And I got this separately. It's not the same manufacturer, but it's really similar. And it's okay. I think it can pull together. And then I just start like grabbing from my stash. Again, I don't hesitate to mix wovens and batiks. Unless it's teeny tiny piecing, then it can be pain. But I love that. This gives you an example too of it's not just color, it can be this type of print that's here. There's that one. And then this, I don't know if you guys at Confidence Stitch still have it. It was all on your sale just this last month or so. But, oh God, I love this. I should have bought 5 yards of it, I swear. This is absolute heaven, I think. And this is a weird thing, but I don't think it's so weird. I think a lot of people are this way. I have to fold my selvages out of my view. It always like is like looking at I don't know what. But I really love this one. It just pulls it all together. And when it comes over here to this, it makes that then kind of come together. This one's kind of fun because while it's more purple than this, when you put this with, it kind of again has that pull, maybe. And then maybe when you pull the green in, maybe that makes it. Now at this point, fabric has started my curiosity. I don't have any idea what pattern I'm thinking of using. I got enough of this to do one of those one block wonders where you cut the triangles and make a kaleidoscope type of thing. And the repeat on it is something like 20 inches. So I've got a sizable chunk of fabric here because you need at least 6 repeats. And this one just seems like it's a good, you need a calm down one. And I think it works. This is, I haven't decided, jury's still out. But this could be a calm down. And I just brought a little chunk of it, so I have a lot more at home. But it could do it as long as this wasn't there and this wasn't there. That's a good point. Yeah, you're right. No, you're totally right. I personally, this print is not quite right. The style of it is just not, this has more modern, swirly graphic stuff going on. It does. Yes, yes. So then I set those. If I find myself going, okay, I've got to pick some, I go, okay, do I like this one or this one better? This one. Okay, that one's going out. Do I like this one or this one better? Still that one. And I can't, yeah, it's like the eye doctor until you get to, and what has happened for me in putting this, I really lean to greens, but for some reason, the greens I've pulled anyway aren't working. And so it might help to find the fabric print strip, which is right there. And that can show me that, oh my gosh, there's this like minty green, which is I think why that goes. And this is so luscious. I think I got this here too. There's a gold thread, and I can't remember what you call this. It's it has a name. It's like linen, but it's not. It's just fun. But so it has this mixed color that you can't quite get your eye on. And I think that one's kind of nice. And I love this color width, but I'm not sure that the design is a good fit. It might be. So that's what happens to me when I start playing. And then if I get a phone call or I have an appointment or something, have to leave, I put them all back in a bag again and put them up on the shelf. Go, okay, I didn't get that finished yet. But boy, this is just the perfection, I think.
Yeah, I mean, when it really needs that green, that brighter,
And this has like that dull green and bright green and yeah, and this bright, yeah, everything kind of pulls nicely. Yeah, yeah. You know, and again, it depends what I want to do with it. Is it going to be a table runner? Well, in that case, I might just have this little bit might be enough of what I need, and I can go for it and call it good.
If for a table runner, you don't want to be too busy, or you might get sick while you're eating.
Well, there you go. No, we don't want that. We don't want that. Yeah. So anyway, so that's kind of the way it works for me, and there's so many easy patterns that you when you have pretty fabric and a few not so pretty fabrics, you know, they kind of help the pretty ones show off. You know, it all can work really well. Actually, as I'm looking at this, 1, 2, 3, 4 could be that lover's knot, the pink one I showed you guys, and that could be really nice. And then just do a yeah. So having a few blocks in your back pocket that you know how to tackle, get to it and make it, gives you pleasure. It gives me pleasure, so that I have been handling fabric, and that I've been my personality likes having productivity involved, and I am more getter done oriented, but if this gives you joy, then keep doing this. Just keep doing it and have fun. It's the we all need space to help our hearts and our minds come together to be the person we are, and so that creativity is really important. Having outlets. So thank you. I think that uses it up.
And I was reading, somebody had said something in this, well, it's a combination of running knitting group, but I do more than knitting. She sent out something that's saying, the more projects you have going, some people are one project at a time oriented.
Yeah.
But it said, the more you have going, the easier your mind is, because if you get bored with one, you can go on to another one. You're not so driven that, oh, I have to
Get this
first,
done.
or this one.
Yeah. Well, I had a big task to do, and I started this gold and brown one, and the pattern just intrigued me so much. I'm like, I'm going to do that. And I was just informed that the soft landing needs big bed quilts for their families who are here. So I thought, oh, I know what I'll do. That's good. Yeah. And so I just tackled it, got it all done, and I'm really happy with the outcome. So
What did you put on your